They smile at you with polished faces, but behind that smile are sharpened intentions. They whisper in corners, plot in silence, and hope you lose your balance. Not because you're broken, but because they are. They mistake your calm for cowardice, your silence for surrender. But what they don't see is that stillness is power. It's not retreat, it's restraint. And when they throw stones at your peace, they don't destroy it. They simply prove how solid it really is. In this video, you'll learn 4 devastatingly effective ways to hurt those who hate you without raising your voice, your hand, or your heart rate. No outbursts, no revenge, just pure self-mastery, because the greatest punishment is to show them they never had power over you in the first place.
Number 1.
Silence is the first strike. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of power. First of all, picture the last time someone tried to bait you with an insult. They rolled their eyes, raised their voice, and hurled a verbal hook meant to drag you onto their stage. Yet suddenly, you did nothing. You inhaled, exhaled, and let the moment drift by like a cloud refusing to rain. Instantly, their words bounced off an invisible wall they could neither see nor comprehend. Meanwhile, the onlookers, your co-workers, your siblings, even your own doubtful self, watched the instigator stumble over his frustration. You spoke no defense, but the silence itself became a verdict. This arena belongs to the calm. Because of this vacuum, the aggressor often panics. For this reason, Epictetus warned, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those things." In other words, insult only lands if we decide to open the gate. Yet silence is a locked door, and very soon after the attacker realizes he has been shut out, frustration swells inside him like steam trapped in a kettle. Nevertheless, that pressure has nowhere to escape. Consequently, the conflict collapses under its own weight while you remain centered, watching the broken gears of the opponent's mind spin without traction. To illustrate, consider LeBron James during the 2016 NBA season. Commentators doubted his leadership, some fans burned his jersey, and analysts repeated the narrative that he would never deliver a title to Cleveland. However, instead of firing back on television talk shows, he posted quiet midnight training sessions. No captions, no verbal jabs. Just the soft thud of a basketball and the hiss of breath in an empty gym. All of a sudden, the story lost oxygen. Then, when the final buzzer of Game 7 echoed through Oracle Arena and a city erupted in joy, his silence had transformed into thunder. That victory stands as living proof that calm persistence can shout louder than any critic. Furthermore, neuroscience backs what the sages always knew. When you remain silent under attack, the amygdala, the brain's alarm bell, settles down. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex regains the wheel, allowing deliberate choice instead of reflexive outrage. That is to say, silence is not only psychological warfare, it is physiological mastery. Moreover, relationships shift accordingly. Colleagues who once tested your limits begin to respect them. Friends who once craved spectacle start seeking counsel. Enemies, stripped of reaction, start doubting their own scripts. And very soon after, the social storm that felt inevitable fades into the background hum of ordinary life. Next, let us ask, if silence is powerful, why is it so hard? The answer indeed is pride. Ego wants the last word and fears looking weak. Yet Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, and steward of an empire, wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." Unbeknownst to many modern readers, he penned those lines while Rome simmered with political intrigue that could have swallowed him whole. Importantly, his private journal shows that the loudest person in the room is often the least certain. Similarly, you prove your certainty not by speaking more, but by mastering the pause. Additionally, remember that silence differs from suppression. Suppression hides pain. Silence transforms it. Because of this distinction, channel the energy you would waste on arguing into creative craft. Write the business plan. Finish the workout. Call your grandmother. Each productive action reinforces the inner script. My peace is non-negotiable. With each passing second, that script carves itself deeper into your identity. Eventually, restraint is no longer forced discipline. It is second nature. Like a lighthouse that does not strive to shine, it simply shines. Meanwhile, critics may label your stillness passive. However, they misread the scoreboard. In contrast, silence is the ultimate active defense, a shield that never tires and a sword that never dulls. Moreover, what's more, it forces the aggressor to wrestle his own projection. He imagines your thoughts, questions his tactics, and as a result, punches himself out shadowboxing fantasies you never confirm. Thus, you conserve energy while he exhausts his. What could be more efficient or more devastating? Indeed, take the case of J.K. Rowling before she became a household name. More than a dozen publishers rejected her manuscript for Harry Potter. Friends suggested she write something more practical, and critics dismissed her as a single mother clinging to a childish dream. Nonetheless, she answered with drafts, not debates. She wrote on napkins in cafes instead of writing rebuttals in comment sections. When the novel finally launched, and later enchanted hundreds of millions, the silence she had kept along the journey roared louder than any argument she could have voiced. Because of this pattern, I offer you a simple daily rehearsal. First, identify a low-stakes annoyance, a snarky online comment, a rude driver, or a sibling's sarcastic jab. Then instead of replying, breathe once, smile once, and pivot your attention to intent. Ask silently, what am I building that matters more than this irritation? Consequently, the situation shrinks to its true size. Insignificant. Practice tonight, refine tomorrow, repeat next week. Suddenly, silence feels less like effort and more like identity. A signature move the world grows to expect from you. Subsequently, watch how people recalibrate around your new frequency. Some will draw nearer, seeking the stability you radiate. Others will drift away, unable to feed on your calm. Both outcomes serve your mission. Likewise, your internal narrative shifts from, I must defend myself, to I must develop myself. As Seneca observed, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Undoubtedly, to live serenely among storms without feeding them is a greater act of courage still. Ultimately, mastering silence is not about avoiding words. It is about choosing battles that scale with your destiny. To wrap things up, remember this: the person who stays silent owns the tempo of the room. The one who owns the tempo owns the outcome. Equally important, the one who owns the outcome becomes immune to petty provocations. Therefore, let others exhaust themselves shouting at shadows. You remain the mountain, immovable, unshakable, serene. And that, my friend, is the first strike no enemy can parry.
Number 2.
Outlive their hate. Hatred is loud, but it's also short-lived, like a firecracker, sharp in the moment, but silent seconds later. It burns quickly, fueled by insecurity and ego. Meanwhile, resilience, quiet, committed, invisible, lasts. And that's the great paradox of power. You don't defeat hate by matching it, you destroy it by outgrowing it. First of all, understand this. When someone chooses to hate you, they're making an emotional investment in your downfall. Their energy becomes tethered to your failure. But you don't need to invest anything in return. Every time you choose to build instead of bite back, to move forward instead of look back, you slowly exhaust the fire they started. And when their energy fades, you remain calm, focused, and rising. You see, haters are short-term thinkers. They gamble on your weakness. They wait for you to crumble. But long-term living, grounded, stable, and intentional, removes their oxygen, and very soon after, the drama dies on its own. Not because you fought it, but because you refused to feed it. To illustrate, look at Maya Angelou. Criticized, rejected, underestimated. She had every reason to respond with bitterness, but instead she poured her soul into writing, activism, and performance. She didn't respond to hate, she replaced it. And over time, her grace towered above her critics. She once wrote, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." That's the essence of this principle. Outliving hate isn't survival, it's elevation. Moreover, this isn't about appearing strong, it's about becoming untouchable through focus. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "How much better to heal a wrong than to avenge one?" Why? Because healing breaks the emotional link. It cuts the cord that keeps you entangled in someone else's bitterness. When you outlive hate, you're not ignoring the pain. You're transforming it into peace. Now let's go deeper. What does it actually mean to outlive someone's hate? It means your habits become louder than their words. While they stay up late gossiping, you rise early and journal. While they recycle stories of betrayal, you create new chapters. Eventually, your very existence contradicts everything they said about you. And that contradiction, that silent, steady proof, torments them more than any verbal comeback ever could. To further illustrate, think of Oprah Winfrey, raised in poverty, abused as a child, criticized for her voice, her weight, her choices. But instead of shrinking, she became one of the most influential voices of her generation. Not by attacking her doubters, but by outlasting them, she once said. You become what you believe. And she believed in something larger than her wounds. Similarly, Nelson Mandela endured 27 years of prison, yet emerged with vision, not vengeance. He didn't waste time settling scores. He built a new nation. That's not weakness, that's strength. Stoic, enduring, almost mythic in its restraint. His ability to delay reaction in favor of future construction is exactly what Stoicism teaches. Power comes from direction, not emotion. Even though you may not face the same scale of challenge, the principle remains. Your real triumph isn't found in confrontation, it's found in consistency, in the quiet, private rituals that compound over years, until you've walked so far forward that they're not even visible in your rear view. Furthermore, this isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Psychologists have shown that people who focus on long-term purpose experience greater emotional regulation. When you orient your mind toward the future, your nervous system calms down. You shift from reaction to creation. You stop reliving the past and start architecting a future they can't touch. That's why every small act matters. Drinking water, taking the walk, reading one chapter, saving $5. These aren't just personal victories. They're spiritual revolutions. Each one says, I am not staying here. Because of this discipline, your life becomes something haters can't comprehend. They see your silence and call it arrogance. They see your distance and call it cold. But you're not avoiding them. You're avoiding the version of yourself that used to need their validation. And here's the twist. They know it. They know they no longer have access to you. Not your time, not your peace, not even your attention. And very soon after, their rage turns into confusion. They realize they are still playing a role in your old story, but you've rewritten the entire plot. Now, how do you practice this? Start with boundaries, not the kind you announce, but the kind you become. Boundaries are not just what you say no to, they're what you say yes to daily. A bedtime, a morning ritual, a workout, a deep breath before replying. These small choices accumulate, and over time, they build a life so deeply rooted in purpose that no amount of gossip can uproot it. Equally important, anchor yourself in gratitude. Gratitude reminds you that you're already making progress. You're already healing. You're already becoming someone stronger than the version they once hurt. And from that place, hate feels like background static. Loud for a moment, but irrelevant to the melody. Furthermore, measure your energy. Ask yourself, who gets your thoughts? Who gets your time? Who gets your silence? Don't give away your focus to people who've already shown they're unworthy of your presence. You are not obligated to keep explaining who you've become to those committed to misunderstanding you. Ultimately, to outlive someone's hate is to rise so steadily, so unshakably, that they no longer exist in your line of vision. They seek drama. You seek direction. They chase attention. You build legacy, and that contrast will haunt them. Not because you forced it to, but because you didn't need it to. To wrap things up, remember this. Hate is loud but temporary. Growth is quiet but permanent. You don't need to shout back. You just need to keep walking forward. And with each passing day, the distance grows until the battle they're still fighting becomes one you no longer remember. Outlive them, quietly, gracefully, powerfully.
Number 3.
Build a life so disciplined it exposes their weakness. Discipline is quiet power, steady, unadvertised, and unstoppable. First of all, picture the critic who studies your every move, waiting for you to oversleep, skip the workout, or blow the budget. They crave proof that you are just as undisciplined as they are. But then dawn breaks, and there you are, journaling while the sky is still violet, lacing your shoes while most alarms remain silent. Instantly, your routine becomes a broadcast they cannot mute. You are constructing something gossip cannot dent. Very soon after, their doubts grow restless in the face of your consistency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Stop talking about what a good man is. Be one." In other words, discipline is not a caption. It is lived geometry. Each repeated habit draws a straight line, and those lines form the blueprint of character. Because of this slow construction, enemies find themselves dwarfed by pillars they cannot topple. They hurl stones of doubt, yet the edifice keeps rising, unmoved. As the plot thickens, they search for cracks, yet discover discipline pours concrete every sunrise. Consider Benjamin Franklin. Long before lightning rods and constitutions, he asked each dawn, "What good shall I do today?" He divided his day into blocks for reading, writing, invention, and reflection. Out of nowhere, that modest structure forged a polymath whose influence spanned presses, libraries, and diplomacy. Franklin never debated doubters. He simply produced results. Subsequently, skeptics converted to admirers, and the scoreboard wrote his rebuttal. However, be honest, building discipline stings at first. The early alarm assaults comfort. The cold shower jolts the senses. The budget refuses impulse. Yet Seneca reminds us, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. Discipline welcomes controlled adversity, so that real adversity meets a practiced warrior. Moreover, neuroscience confirms consistent routines. Lower stress hormones and strengthen neural pathways for focus. Thus, discipline is self-engineered resilience. Next, reflect on Serena Williams. Cameras captured rivals mocking her meticulous footwork drills. Yet those drills, repeated in silent gyms, produced serves that shattered records. Williams did not clap back on social media each time a pundit predicted her decline. Instead, she clapped chalk off her racket and let scoreboards settle the debate. Therefore, when trophies glinted beneath stadium lights, her habits spoke louder than any tweet. Additionally, discipline has an optical effect. It turns small victories into mirrors reflecting another's missed potential. The healthier you eat, the more glaring junk food appears to the person beside you. The more consistently you study, the louder someone else's procrastination echoes in their head. Importantly, your goal is not to shame them. Your goal is to shine. Nonetheless, excellence is a spotlight that forces choices. Meanwhile, do not confuse discipline with rigidity. Rigidity snaps. Discipline bends and endures. Franklin adjusted his schedule when diplomacy dragged him across oceans, yet preserved the spirit of accountability. Likewise, Williams adapted her training after injuries, integrating mindfulness alongside power. What's more, this adaptability confounds critics. Every obstacle becomes new fuel. Because of this autonomy, your energy compounds. You read one page tonight, and a library forms in your mind 5 years later. You save $10 today and fund a business a decade later. And then, to everyone's surprise, the scoreboard flips, revealing a gap too wide to close. Nevertheless, discipline can feel lonely. Remember Epictetus. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In that moment when friends tease your meal prep or question a Friday night spent reading, breathe. Your solitude is temporary. Your growth is permanent. Above all, track your habits. Productivity expert James Clear teaches that what gets measured gets mastered. Draw a simple grid: wake time, exercise, study, gratitude, finances. Check the box each day. Subsequently, the visual chain becomes a game you refuse to break. Soon, progress feels as inevitable as sunrise. Furthermore, discipline is a conversation with your future self. Midway through his reign, Marcus Aurelius paused each afternoon for what he called a midday correction. He would scan the morning's actions, forgive any slip, and recalibrate the evening. Consider adopting the same ritual. Set a phone reminder at noon that simply asks, "Am I still on plan?" Because of this check-in, small deviations never harden into detours. Moreover, psychologists at Duke University report that nearly 40% of daily actions are habits, not decisions. Therefore, the tighter you weave discipline into routine, the fewer openings chaos has to invade. Likewise, purpose fuses discipline to meaning. Viktor Frankl wrote that, "Those who have a why can bear almost any how." Your why does not need applause. It needs clarity, so write it, refine it, read it aloud. Then let every alarm clock, every healthy meal, every focused hour be a vote for that purpose. Consequently, each disciplined act becomes a love letter to the future you are determined to meet. Indeed, juxtapose this rhythm with your detractors' chaos. They stay up late doom scrolling, skip breakfast, miss deadlines, then project insecurity onto you. In contrast, you glide through morning rituals, turn in work early, and treat setbacks as design tweaks, not identity threats. Clearly, the difference is discipline, and discipline is a choice renewed each dawn. Importantly, celebrate without complacency. Acknowledge milestones, 10 consecutive workouts, 30 days of budgeting, but immediately set the next benchmark. Discipline thrives on forward motion. Without delay, ask, what's the next small edge I can sharpen? This question keeps you humble and hungry. What's more, share your framework with those who are ready. Mentorship multiplies mastery. By teaching your template, you reinforce your own principles and inoculate others against mediocrity. Seneca observed, "Men learn while they teach." Thus, discipline becomes community, and community becomes momentum. Ultimately, let the chatter continue. Let the whispers swirl. While they rehearse excuses, you rehearse excellence. Choose one cornerstone habit tonight, perhaps 10 minutes of stillness or a nightly reflection a la Franklin. Protect it with the ferocity of a parent guarding a child. Layer another habit and another. Consequently, a year from now, your life will tower above the ruins of their predictions. To wrap things up, remember a timeless Stoic truth. The greatest revenge is not defeating the enemy, but rendering the enemy irrelevant. Build the schedule that shames their gossip, the physique that dwarfs their doubt, the portfolio that nullifies their forecasts. Build until the only sound they can make is silence. Silence that echoes the choices they never made. Equally important, do not gloat, smile, breathe, and get back to work. For the disciplined, victory is daily, silent, and absolute.
Number 4.
Forgive them and mean it. Forgiveness is the final strike your enemy never expects. On the surface, it looks like surrender, but in reality, it's complete liberation. You see, grudges are like invisible handcuffs. They lock you to the person who hurt you, and they keep the pain alive long after the moment has passed. Yet the instant you choose to forgive, truly forgive, without hidden bitterness, you unlock the cuffs, walk out of the cell, and leave the door swinging behind you. Suddenly, the person who wounded you loses their final weapon, your attention. Epictetus once said, "Who then is invincible? The one who cannot be upset by anything outside his control." Hate tries to chain you to the past, to trap you inside something that can no longer be changed. But forgiveness breaks that chain. First of all, it frees up your mental bandwidth. Then it restores your emotional energy, and then it redirects your focus from obsession to creation. To everyone's surprise, your calm becomes louder than any speech of revenge. You no longer live in my mind. Take Michelle Obama. During her years in the White House, people attacked everything, from her looks to her education to her patriotism. She could have clapped back, millions would have cheered. But instead, she chose what she called going high. She focused on children's health, wrote a memoir that moved the world, and launched global initiatives to uplift girls. Her forgiveness wasn't passive. It was strategic. It was power channeled into legacy. And eventually, even her loudest critics had to admit her impact was real, undeniable, and permanent. Moreover, science agrees with the Stoics. Stanford researchers found that people who practiced genuine forgiveness had lower cortisol levels and healthier hearts. In other words, forgiveness isn't just a moral choice, it's biological freedom. On the flip side, long-term resentment leads to inflammation, high blood pressure, and a weakened immune system. So every grudge you release isn't just a spiritual win, it's an act of self-preservation. But then you might ask, how do I forgive someone who isn't even sorry? Marcus Aurelius answered that with clarity. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Even if they never apologize, you choose not to become like them. Start with perspective. Write down exactly what happened. Say how it hurt you. Name what is still in your control. Almost instantly, the fog of emotion begins to clear, and you see the event for what it really was, not what it felt like at the time. After that, extract the lesson. Ask yourself, what did this teach me about boundaries, about trust, or about expectations I didn't realize I had? Monimus Rufus once said that philosophy turns wounds into wisdom. That is to say, real forgiveness doesn't erase memory, it transforms it. And because of that transformation, you become more immune to the same pain in the future. Furthermore, practice symbolic release. Some people burn the paper where they wrote their anger. Others say the words, "I release you," during a moment of stillness. Whatever you choose, mark the shift. Let it become a line in the sand. From that moment forward, you live in a reality where the person who hurt you no longer controls your mood. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, is another powerful example. A soft-spoken man, he was mocked for decades. Comedians called him childish, fake, overly sentimental. But he never lashed out. Instead, he kept inviting them onto his show, kept listening, kept thanking them for their time. Eventually, the jokes softened. Some of those same critics became his supporters. Forgiveness didn't diminish his influence. It deepened it. Now, don't misunderstand. Forgiving someone doesn't mean reconciling with them, Seneca said. Forgive many things in others, nothing in yourself. In other words, you can release the anger and still keep your boundaries. You can block the number, decline the invitation, and walk away with your peace intact. Forgiveness without boundaries invites repetition. Forgiveness with boundaries creates growth. At the same time, develop empathy, but not excuses. Ask yourself what fear, pain, or ignorance might have driven their behavior. Empathy helps you understand, but it doesn't mean you have to accept or repeat the pattern. It frees you from replaying the pain like a broken record. Because of this shift, you replace the question, why me, with what now? That's the moment you reclaim authorship of your life. And then, make it a daily discipline. At night, reflect on your day. Did anyone frustrate you, hurt you, disappoint you? If so, release it before sleep. Marcus Aurelius used to do this in his journal. He wrote, "To bear with those who fail in charity is the true charity." This nightly practice prevents resentment from taking root and turning into bitterness by morning. For a deeper example, study Viktor Frankl. He lived through horrors in a concentration camp. And yet in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl didn't pretend injustice didn't exist, but he refused to give it control over his spirit. And because of that, his life's work helped millions find meaning through suffering. What's more, forgiveness builds strength like a muscle. Start small. The stranger who cuts you off in traffic, the barista who gets your name wrong, then move to bigger things. Over time, the weight that once crushed you becomes lighter, manageable, eventually forgettable. Not because it didn't matter, but because you chose to let go. Ultimately, forgiveness is your quiet declaration that the story you're writing now matters more than the chapter they tried to destroy. It takes courage, self-respect, and repetition, but it grants you the one thing every Stoic holds sacred: inner peace. Seneca said it best. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. To wrap things up, remember this: those who cling to grudges drink the poison and expect the other person to suffer, but those who forgive set the cup down, walk forward, and never look back. So forgive them and mean it. And then watch. The silence of your serenity will haunt them more than any revenge ever could. You don't need to fight them to win. You don't need to argue, explain, or prove anything. When you protect your peace, build your discipline, outlast their noise, and forgive without permission, you rise above the very game they want you trapped in. And that, in the deepest Stoic sense, is what it means to be truly untouchable. Because the greatest revenge is not retaliation, it's evolution. It's becoming someone so focused, so stable, so full of quiet power, that their chaos can't even reach you. Every insult loses weight, every slight fades, and every attempt to drag you back simply proves you've moved on. This path isn't loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real, it's steady, it's yours. So when they come for you with words, give them silence. When they hope for your collapse, show them discipline. When they drown in resentment, show them endurance. And when they expect you to strike back, smile, breathe, and forgive. That's Stoic mastery. And that's how you hurt those who hate you without ever lifting a finger. If this resonated, leave a comment below. I choose peace. Let them know you're done playing small, you're walking forward free.